video game worlds. Some are wide and empty, others are super packed with enemies. I thought it'd be fun to look at a few of my favorites in no particular order. But before we begin, I wanted to ask if y'all could subscribe. It really does help my channel grow and help spread my videos to other people who also might enjoy them. So if you could, subscribe and drop a like below. It really does help me out. The first world I wanted to talk about today is Destiny's equivalent of Florida, Savathun's Throne World. I have been playing the franchise since 2014, and let me tell you, the game has some awesome locations. And while there are many iconic and cool areas, none compare to Savathun's Throne World. While most locations try to stick with a certain theme, I think Savathun's Throne World really does sell the whole Hive's light transition. What is normally dark, dismal, and foreboding hive buildings are now far lighter in color, yet just as intimidating as before. Combine that with the red plants, the statues, the world just pops. I think that this is easily one of the coolest interpretations of hive architecture in the game. So many times the hive are exclusively shown in dark lighting and just darkness, and it just hides all the beauty that their architecture can have. So having this area be all light themed just really helps make it pop. It makes it so much more interesting, especially since we've been fighting the hive since 2014 and they've always had the same buggy gothic look. I think that this is just the coolest way to show their other lighter side, and while it's still intimidating, I think it's still quite beautiful as well. However, the cool thing is on the very other side of Savathun's Throne World, there's an entire swamp, and that it's super darkly lit there. It is dark, the Scorn have taken root in the swamp, there's all this kind of darkness architecture, and with the appearance of the swamp, it really helps separate the hive's like high society look and the Scorn's low society bottom feeder look. It's a really cool dynamic between the light sustaining the hive versus a Scorn having to fight through the darkness for scraps. And on top of that, I just really like the lost sectors here. I think that this is one of the best lost sectors areas for lost sectors we have in the game, and I really like them. And I think they're really cool because they have like a challenge to them, especially if you are a little bit under leveled, whereas regular lost sectors are just kill all the enemies then kill the boss. These ones have a little bit more mechanics. I believe this kind of stuff started on the moon, where they had the moon lost sectors be a little bit more in depth than normal, which is cool, but I really think it shines the best here. This place really does feel like Florida. I mean, we got Disneyland, we got swamps, we have Florida men everywhere. I swear, Savathun, she saw Florida and was like, I'm gonna go cook. And from that, we got, in my opinion, one of the best Destiny locations in a long time. Like, I cannot stress how well this was done. One of my favorite areas in Destiny, hands down, especially as a long-time player. Next on my list, we have one of the most underrated games in the franchise of Pokemon. That is Pokemon Colosseum. It's easily one of my favorites, and it's one of the most interesting ones out there. Coming out of the Gen 3 era, Pokemon Colosseum was intended to help people acquire Pokemon not normally found in Sapphire and Ruby. And you catch Pokemon by taking them from other people. You literally become the Team Rocket of Pokemon. And what is a better way to show this and illustrate this darker, or not so much darker, but more, rugged looking Pokemon than a town. More importantly, Pyrite Town. One of the grimiest cities in any game, hands down, Pyrite Town looks like the town you're going to wake up in, missing your wallet, keys, and kidneys. Signs are falling apart, buildings are like patched up with whatever's lying around, and according to most NPCs in the game, the people there are usually wanted criminals. Like, I cannot stress this enough, This is one of the grimiest cities in any Pokemon game, which gives me one great idea. This place would be the perfect place for a Walmart. I'm just saying, Walmart, you have your next franchise location. It's a shame that Pokemon hasn't remade this game, or hasn't at least tried to port it either. Especially since modern Pokemon could really use a game like this. They could really use just a grimy game that has an edgier tone. I think that would work really well for Pokemon, especially since a lot of people who play Pokemon now have been playing for years and are adults. But that's just my opinion. Of course, I don't think Nintendo or Pokemon listens to their fans that much, if I'm being honest. Next up, we have a classic PS2 platformer, the Precursor City in Jak and Daxter. This is hands down a favorite final area of mine across any platforming game. The cross between ancient broken down technology, the darkness, it just works so well here. Normally, Precursor tech is usually like a light bronzy color to it, and it's shiny and all futuristic. Yet here, it's kind of broken down and it's been pieced back together. There are wires exposed, there's ominous lights in the distance, there's clear signs that the people here are trying to slowly take this stuff apart, see how it works, and put it back together to better understand it. Now, the cool thing is that this is a course run by Gol and Maya, the main villains of the game. You know, this is their area, and so the game doesn't try like fill in just random precursor enemies. It uses the standard dark element enemies that are normally in the game, and it's really, really cool. The dark eco enemies are just kind of fit. They kind of fit this darker tone, you know, version of this precursor tech. The cool thing that this place is that it has a collection of both old and new platforming challenges from other precursor areas. My favorite being the multicolored tiles. Once you step on a color, it, along with all matching tiles, will fall. While shorter sections are super easy to cross, the game eventually has you cross an entire room of these tiles. With all the fused precursor tech and dark bottomless floors and enemies, it's a pretty memorable final area. This is what really made me love ancient ruins in games, and more importantly, people taking these ancient ruins and repurposing them for their own use, whether that's good or bad. I really think that more games could better easily pull this off if they, you know, try to take a few tips from the past. Like Jak and Daxter was made for the PS2, and if you boot it up, it still looks really good on official hardware. I couldn't imagine what a modern version of this game would look like, but I hope that if it does get a remake, I hope they do this area just as good as before. I know that there's a PS4 like upscaled version, but I'm looking for something along the lines of like Insane Trilogy kind of levels, especially since both games were made by Naughty Dog. From one PS2 platformer to another, Sly 2's version of Prague is easily one of the creepiest and darkest places, not just in the franchise, but I think in a lot of platforms games in general. It has blood red skies, grim streets. This place is the stuff of nightmares for kids like me who played this. The main factor contributing to this is that you start this whole section of the game off with just Bentley. He is the weakest member physically of the group, and as a result, when you see the giant vulture enemies in this area, it really separates yourself from the feeling you've had with Sly and Murray, where they were scary before, but you could handle them. Here, a few hits and you're out. And the cool thing I should say is that no matter how many times you play this area, the second you play it as Bentley, all that kind of like stress comes back to you. I think that because this game has such a good art style, it can really let loose the gothic tones and the subtle horror that this level is supposed to have. It's really, really, really well done. They don't stop. Like, they keep going. They have all kinds of cool things. They have, from the buildings, they have this giant prison that just towers in the distance. And when you finally get to see it, you're like, oh, this place is scary. Like, they were cooking when they made this area. They also have, later in the level, you can go and explore a small crypt, which is really cool because it just sells more of that grim, dark, art style this level was going for. And I just want to point out one thing, that there's this wolf waiting in a coffin for anyone to come by. Now that's dedication to work. Somebody put this guy on the Employee of the Month wall, alongside his obituary, because I killed him. A controversial pick, I know, but I genuinely love Lanayru Desert and Skyward Sword. Normally, I dislike desert settings. I think they can be just kind of bland, kind of boring. There's usually not too much to them. I just have never really found a fondness for deserts in general. But Lanayru feels like more than a desert. The biggest thing is, of course, the timeshift stone mechanic. Striking them will revert a location back to the way it seemed several hundred years ago. How Link is able to stand them without disappearing and turning into a cloud of dust, I have no idea. In the past, enemies have electricity, and when they hit you, they stun you, and they can stun you multiple times, making it feel dangerous. This is the game's area where they have electricity, where things can now hurt you that you've never dealt with before. And I've seen electricity be paired with a lot of things in games like forests or future zones, but I've very rarely have ever seen like the element of electricity being paired with a desert. I very rarely see that, and it's really cool that this was in the game. The other thing that's cool about Lanayru is the old architecture. The act of time shifting lets me see how it looked back then, but then the second you untime shift, it's like a snap back to reality, and you see just the old buildings, and they're left there to fester and to have whatever creatures can hold inside and make it a home. It's really cool. It makes me want to explore this place, not just in the present, but in the past. Like, if they ever made a fan game for Skyward Sword, I'd want them to make a past version of Lanayru you can visit, because that would be awesome to be in, What was this place like fully revamped with everybody working hard? It looks like it'd be a really cool place. Another really cool thing I like about this area has to be the looming Triforce symbol in the background. It's in the skybox. However, when you actually get to the area that it's over, you can see it's connected to the old Temple of Time, which is really cool because it kind of links it in to the whole grander, Zelda aesthetic. It's super cool, and it lets you like hone in on it, and you see it's not just part of the skybox, it's an actual object in the land, and it's really cool. Another big cool thing is this giant tree that forms when you time shift the area, and it's really cool just to imagine what this giant gorge would have been like, like with a giant river running through it and stuff. It's really, really cool, and it's just massive, and I love it. I love giant trees. I love giant trees, and I love ancient ruins. And simply put, this is easily my favorite interpretation of Lanayru Desert across any Zelda game. This game just it hits it. Every time it hits it, and I love it. But if y'all have any areas in games that you like and you want to show or talk about, drop it in the comments below. I'd I love to hear all of your ideas. I love to hear, you know, what your opinions. And honestly, it's really nice to hear from y'all whenever you guys drop stuff in the comments. I truly do try to make sure read, and I try to make sure I take what I can from every one of them. But with that being said, once again, like, comment, and subscribe. It does help me out. I'll see y'all in my next video. Bye-bye.